Hello, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, Chicago Cubs baseball podcast with more baseball than Cubs to talk about right now. I'm Kevin McCaffrey, and it's Amazon Prime Live's own Adam Mamawala. What's up?
How's it going? Yes, everyone knows me. That's my favorite thing about comedy
Yeah.
intros. Anytime it's like you've seen this person on whatever the thing is, and 99.99999% of the time, no one has seen anyone on anything.
No, even if it's like a big thing, people probably
Yeah,
haven't seen you on it, you know?
right.
Like, people be like, oh, but you've seen him on Letterman. For me, Letterman retired in 2015, so you definitely haven't in a long time. And even then, a sliver of the world. It is untrue.
It's
But you
true.
were on a sports thing before we get to the baseball. How
Yeah.
was that? You were on air.
It was great. It was a lot of fun. It's a show called Game Breakers that unfortunately is ending pretty soon. But
Hmm.
there's two comedians who host the show. They do not love the Cubs, but they are two comedians who host a sports show. And yeah, I genuinely don't know if anyone watches it. I got to get the footage because it will be fun. But I got to go on there and talk baseball, and then you are going to be on there. Is it this week?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Tomorrow, yeah. So we're recording this on Wednesday. If you look up Game Breakers on Amazon, you can see Kevin. I think it's live. I want to say usually it's at like three something, like 3:15, 3:30,
Yeah.
and then the archive is there, so you can watch both of us on Amazon Prime. How about that?
Hell yeah, that's exciting.
But just make sure you're not allowed to wear logos. And right now you can't see Kevin, but Kevin is what I would describe as aggressively Midwestern.
Yeah, I'm logoed up.
Just a yeah. You got a Notre Dame hat, and then is that like an Illini or Bears sweatshirt?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm two different universities right now that I'm representing, where neither one did I go to. I went to Ball State in Indiana, but Notre Dame, where my parents went, got that hat, and then my brother Patrick went to University of Illinois. So yeah, I'm real Midwestern up right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's not Midwestern up is the baseball playoffs. like
They sure aren't. Yeah. No Midwestern representation whatsoever, which I guess is not that surprising given that the AL and NL Central were not the strongest divisions in baseball. I actually think ultimately the NL Central was stronger than I thought it would be. The AL
mhm.
Central was predictably bad. I mean, was anyone even above 500 besides the Twins? I don't think so, right?
I don't think Cleveland made it there, because it would have
No.
been Cleveland second. But I know at one point, I think there was a moment where Detroit even, I was going to say dipped
Yeah.
above, which isn't how dipping works usually,
No.
but briefly surpassed.
Yeah, I mean there was a moment this season where the last place team in the AL East had a better record than the best team in the AL Central.
And that is not to get into off-season stuff, but you know, you may have seen some rumors about Shohei. Like there's been
Mm.
like heavy Boston rumors
Mm.
about Shohei Ohtani, which wasn't really. I think that wasn't really one of the favored teams for most of this year, and everyone thinks it's still the Dodgers are most likely to get him, and I would agree with that. But Boston seems to be coming on as a heavy rumor, and for me, if I'm Shohei Ohtani and I've been playing on a team where yeah, Mike Trout's been injured a lot, but you've been with arguably the other best player in the world, and you're
Mhm.
not making the playoffs, it seems to me going to the AL East would be a good way to fuck yourself out and get in the playoffs like going
Right.
forward. You know, if you want to be the most sure your team is going to at least get into October, it seems like the AL East is the worst division to go to
Right.
just because it's so good.
So what you're saying is you predict Otani to the Royals.
Yeah, I mean, you put him on the Royals, that is enough to flip the division, probably. Look, am I angling for him to go to one of the Centrals? Yeah, I am. I think it should be pretty easy to make the playoffs if you're in
Yeah.
one of the Centrals. So.
Now, should we start with a little bit of Cubs talk? Talk about the Ricketts letter, and then get into MLB stuff.
Yeah, you tell me about the Ricketts letter.
So I'm sure anyone who's listening to this cares enough about the Cubs to have already read it. But
Hmm.
basically, Tom Ricketts sent out his usual end of the season record. Hey, thanks for coming out and for a great season, and like this is what we think of how the year went, and this is what we expect moving forward. And I will say, both Hoyer's comments during the press conference and Ricketts, what they said lined up with what I would want them to say. Will
Mm.
their actions line up with that? We don't know yet. But in terms of like assessing what this year was, I was very much hoping that they would not come into those press conferences or send those letters saying, "Hey, we were above 500. A lot of people didn't think we would do that this year. We were competitive. We stayed in it down the stretch. So like it was a good year.
Hmm.
And what both of them said is that yes, there were things accomplished this year and things to be proud of and things to take away from the season, but there is no world in which framing missing the playoffs as a good thing is acceptable. And I would agree. And I think Cubs fans and probably fans of every team, but especially fans of a bigger market team, would agree that 83 and 79 and fading down the stretch and missing the playoffs is not something that anybody's going to consider a success. Now, if they finish differently, let's say their cold stretch in September happens in August and then they finish on a hot streak and get back into it and just miss the playoffs, are we feeling a little more positive? Maybe, but either way, I don't think any of us are looking at missing the playoffs as a step in the right direction, regardless of what their record was.
Right. And it is good for them to not lean on the positives. And how the letter began, it said, Cubs fans, this wasn't the way we wanted the season to end, and every year we miss the playoffs is a difficult one. And then sort of acknowledged, as you said, the digging of the early hole in the season, then playing very well, yada yada. It it is good. I think you do want to hear them say that this isn't good enough, which that's how Hoyer opened. That's how
Mhm.
Ricketts opened. In here, it's like I don't. And then a lot of the rest of the letter was just like, summing up highlights, basically, how good Justin Steele pitched, ending with a 3.06. I so badly wanted Steele to end with a 2 point something,
Yeah.
It's just, it on the baseball reference page and the
Hmm.
fan graphs, it feels like he deserved it. And I know you can't deserve a number, but
Right.
yeah, talking about Seiya's, ultimately very good offensive year, Dansby, etc. It was a nice summation of the good things while not acting like that's good enough, which is good. I do want to
Hmm.
say, as sort of contrary to that vibe, our friend Tyler, the bread man, out there, messaged us because he got hit up from the Cubs about season tickets, right?
Ah,
And I think like uh,
they
a
must think
lot.
he has a lot of bread.
Hey, must see the Tyler de pastry de patisserie has plenty of bread for you. Get up early in the morning and go get it. Um, but they sort of reached out to him about tickets. I'm sure a lot of fans have had this, and then he wrote back like, no, because they
I
haven't
like
committed
that. Yeah.
to spending, right? And he sent us an exchange he had with them, and he he wasn't yelling at this person. Obviously, the people writing the ticket,
Right.
pitches are not the ones dealing out the contracts. But then they sort of like just responded with a stock summation of the amount of money they signed Suzuki. It's like, including in 2022 when we signed Suzuki and Stroman for a total of 156 million. Last offseason, we signed Dansby to a 177 million contract and Jamison Tyon to a 68 million contract, which makes me feel like, is this a Chat GPT response to money of the Cubs? Because
I
that
think
doesn't
I think it
help.
is.
I
I
think
think
it
it
might literally
genuinely
be,
is
right?
for the people who sell tickets for the Cubs that they have a list of FAQs, and it's like one of the things is if someone responds saying that they're not happy with how the team is being run and that they're not spending enough money,
The money.
this is what you can send them. Because I get it, I'm sure some people who sell tickets for the Cubs are huge baseball fans and know a lot about the team. I'm sure others are doing it because it's a job to have and maybe
Sure.
don't know the way to answer that question, which I understand. But yeah, I think that's funny that that's the response. I also wonder if if like season ticket holder emails get sent out the same way that like you and I send out our availability for clubs with like a hey, would love to have you as a season ticket holder. No worries if not.
Yeah, right. I mean that would be the vibe I would respect coming out of this year. Like, yeah, it's
Right.
been bad for a little bit. We get it, but also I'm glad to not see, I guess, in the Ricketts letter,
Hmm.
while putting over the players who did well. I don't need to hear about the money that you did spend to get to a mediocre
Hmm.
place. And also one thing that in this letter from Sidney Cohen, who I'm sure was following, is if Sidney Cohen is a real person, God bless. Hope
Hmm.
all the ticket sales go good for you. The one who replied to Tyler here, but it doesn't. It just listing dollar amounts doesn't tell you that a team is serious about playing, right? And I
Hmm.
think one thing that we have said here is it's not like the Cubs have never spent money. We don't think that they've spent at the level that a team of this level should be spending. Like
Hmm.
I don't care about the dollars. I care about where you rank in payroll. Is more of a reasonable sort of representation of how serious the team is. So I'm glad to see the Ricketts letter was not just spitting out, we threw these dollars at people because, yeah, you have to spend
Right.
some. The problem has been the Cubs not acting as an elite team in terms of on the field
Yeah.
and the money they take in and spend. So,
Yeah, and I mean the kind of bill of goods that Theo Epstein sold us when he took over the baseball operations was like, we are trying to build sustained success, right?
mm-hmm,
We are trying to be what the Astros have been, what the Dodgers have been, regardless of their postseason results. Like a team that is perennially in the playoffs, winning
mm-hmm.
divisions, and getting there every year. And once you get there, as we've seen, like we've seen the Dodgers this past decade, we've seen the Braves in the 90s. Like just getting there doesn't mean you're going to win more than once or at all.
Yes.
But I think it's pretty reasonable to say, given the fact that they have not played more than, I guess we can count 2020. But the point is, like, they haven't won a playoff game since 2017.
Yes.
They've been there, they've played three total playoff games
Mm-hmm.
since the end of 2017.
Yeah.
Three total games.
Which is not good enough. And when I
No.
was saying payroll rank before, the Cubs ranked 12th in the league in payroll, and then they finished, I think, with the 14th or 15th best record. So it was pretty close to what
Mhm.
getting what you paid for a little bit there. And obviously, it doesn't always correlate. You've got Baltimore ranked 29th, Tampa Bay ranked 28th, right? So some of those teams pop up more. But I guess unless you had any other Ricketts letter points, I
No,
I
go ahead.
think I think that when we're talking about money, that transitions well to the playoffs we're watching right now, where Philadelphia has arguably three guys leading their offense who wanted to be Cubs if
Hmm.
they had been offered equal money. Kyle Schwarber was cut. He was non-tendered to save basically $1.5 million ish, like 1.5 or 2 when they signed Jock Peterson instead for that position. Kyle Schwarber's out here hitting tanks all over the place. Nick Castellanos specifically wanted to be a Cub, and an offer never came. And then we all know
Hmm.
about Bryce Harper. So when we talk about the Cubs not spending enough, we saw Philadelphia, who I think it was their owner who said he was going to spend stupid money. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, man. It looks like that's been working out pretty good for them.
Right. Well, and it's the same thing. Like, there's a lot of speculation that Shohei will go to the Dodgers, who are a team that already has an incredibly high payroll and just won 100 games. But they're not, I don't think, going to pull a 2018 Cubs and be like, let's just run it back. We're good with what we have. Let's see how it goes. And even if they did, arguably, like, they clearly won 100 plus games for a reason.
Yeah,
But when you are already that good and that close, like, I will die on the hill that not signing Bryce Harper is the thing that sticks out the most as being what
absolutely.
kept that window from continuing. So, and I think just like watching the playoffs, and even when I tell myself I'm not going to, like I can't stay away from it. You look at the atmosphere at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia, and I miss it. I miss it so
Yeah,
much because like 2015 was this kind of unexpected gift that none of us really thought we would have that kind of run. 2016, obviously, all the expectations were there, and then they lived up to it. And 2017, you felt like the team got as far as they could go, but just as a fan to get to watch, I guess it was 9 games in 2017, I think like 16, 17 playoff games in 2016, and then, around 9 or 10 games in 2015. The intensity of that, the experience of that, even just watching on TV as a fan is so special that to have really effectively not had that in 6 years, it sucks. Like it's entirely possible that the Cubs lose in 2 games if they get into the playoffs. But I was really, really looking forward to being able to have at least those 2 games to watch this team in the playoffs and see what they could do. Because I remember in 2018, and obviously you were there up close and personal, like when they lost that game 163 to the Brewers and then they lost to the stupid Rockies. My feeling wasn't even like that it was unfair or anything. I just felt sad that I had to stop watching the team that I love.
yeah, and in October baseball, it has been long enough for us as Cubs fans that You sort of forget. So my wife and I were in Las Vegas this past weekend at a big a big crazy wedding that basically a lot of she works for Howard Stern. A lot of Howard Stern staff was there. I actually met and talked to a famous Cubs fan while I was
Oh,
out there at the. He was at the wedding and at the pre-party. Kurt Busch, NASCAR champion Kurt
okay,
Busch, was there. He
cool.
was friends with a guy getting married, and he lives in Vegas. My man was enjoying drinks like I enjoy drinks, and yeah, I talked to him about, and I went up and was like, I appreciate you do a good job at the seventh inning stretch. You like act like you care about it,
Yeah.
and he and he was telling me, yeah, he's like, yeah, man, love the Cubs. Go Cubs this year. You know, this year sucked, but you know, it's got to get
Sounds like a Cubs fan to me.
absolutely. And then he just told me, apropos of nothing, like fuck Kevin Harvick. So he just threw in
Okay.
like that he dislikes another NASCAR driver, which is great. Anyway, while we were out there in Vegas, we were watching, you know, I love a sports book, and we were sitting there, and my wife was saying how October baseball just looks different too.
Hmm.
Like the game, I think it's a mix of obviously the intensity of the crowds, how filled all the crowds are. I think just, you know, the networks shoot the games maybe a little different. And
Yeah.
she was saying it's weird because with the Cubs the last few years, she's forgotten that baseball doesn't exist. Like that baseball does exist outside the summer
Hmm.
because it's just Cubs have been ending in warm weather. And it is
Yeah.
different when you end the season back to chilly weather again. Like
Yeah.
it is a different season of its own that I am missing.
Well, at least she gets to have her birthday back.
Yeah, her birthday is free and clear of Cubs baseball this year. She's October 23rd. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just I think the difference is, and I'm sure we've talked about this before, and you've been to playoff games, like even if you go to a regular season game when the stakes are pretty high, at any given moment during the game, the vast majority of the crowd is not locked in.
Right.
And that's the thing with baseball is that like even as people who are diehards, if you and I go to a Cubs game, like we're still spending a decent amount of that time like talking to each other, you know, getting a beer, whatever. We're paying close attention, but it's not like every single pitch is magnified. And
Right.
in the playoff games that I've been to, that's what was so incredible about it is that like you get to have this collective experience where everybody is equally as invested as you for the most part, save
Hmm.
for you know a couple people who got a free ticket and
The
are
people
sitting in the
behind
luxury
home plate.
boxes. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and fucking Marlins, man. Yeah, and yeah,
That is I oh my god. I don't even think had a chance to talk about this. He has lost all credibility as a fan of baseball. Like if you have enough money to be where he sits,
Mhm.
I don't care if he had already bought the tickets to Milwaukee. It's the first time the Marlins have been in the playoffs in how long that he was allowed to see because in 2020 they were at Wrigley with no
Right.
fans. Like if you have enough money to fly across the country and sit behind home plate everywhere you go, sell the fucking tickets or just don't go to the games and then go to Philadelphia. Like, what's wrong with you?
Oh, I didn't even see that. Marlins man was elsewhere while the Marlins
He
were
was
playing a
in
playoff game.
Milwaukee
I didn't.
watching the Brewers and Diamondbacks. And then when they asked him about it, he was like, oh, it seemed like the Marlins were going to play in Milwaukee. So I had already set up the trip and I just, you know, didn't want to change it.
Yeah,
He was
that's
sitting there watching those games while the Marlins were simultaneously playing in Philadelphia.
perfect garbage fan for a perfect garbage franchise. That just,
Even
I
their
mean,
best fan is still a terrible fan.
it's perfect. It is a
Yeah.
perfect encapsulation of a team that should be sawed off at the edge of the United States and shoved into the sea. It is just just a garbage franchise. Was happy to
Yeah.
see them crash out of there. But yeah, play. I mean, so overall playoff wise, right now we've got Philadelphia is now as we speak 2 games up. Correct on Arizona after their 10
Yeah,
nothing
both
drubbing.
series are 2-0, and the Rangers are arguably even more impressive because they won 2 games in Houston and now get to go back to Arlington.
Yeah, and I mean, I assume you feel the same way. That's how the series are leaning right now. Is exactly how I want it to go. I think
Yeah,
I'm rooting for that outcome.
yeah, and if it does end up going that way, and there's no guarantee of it,
Sure.
but if it does, I think I would. It's tough. Like I really because of my love for Schwarber and Castellanos, and I guess Kimbrel to a lesser extent.
Sure.
Um, I kind of want to see the Phillies win and complete the job from last year. But the Rangers, I have this soft spot for the Rangers because of how excruciating their losses have been.
Yeah.
And wait, have they won a
Never.
championship? They haven't,
No.
right? Yeah.
No. So I mean that is typically what I root for is if a
Yeah.
team has a fan base that has never won,
Mhm.
then, I respect that. We obviously were in that boat for a long time. Not that, I mean, the Cubs were the first team to ever go back to back in the World Series in '07, '08, but
Mhm.
we didn't have a lot of friends who could tell us about it. So I do sympathize with those fan bases, and especially, as you say, the way the Rangers lost to the
Yeah.
friggin' Cardinals is so
Ugh.
cubbish, where they were one strike
Yeah.
away a couple times, and so I would be happy to see the Rangers win it. It would be, in terms of rooting interest, it'd be a real toss up for me because, yeah, personally, I like the guys on the Phillies and would like to see them win, but Philadelphia's whatever otherwise. And I appreciate that they care, that the fan base cares, but also
Mhm.
as a pro labor guy who likes to see teams pay for players, that would be fun because it's like two teams that were like, what if we just bought good players and paid
Right.
them? Because that's exactly what the Rangers did too, getting
Mhm.
Semien and Seager in the same year, and even trading for big names. Obviously, like they traded for Scherzer in the middle of the year. That ain't cheap,
Right.
and yeah,
Yeah, I'm very much of the mindset that I have no interest in seeing a team like the Rays get to the World Series because it just legitimizes a lot of owners' rationalization that spending money isn't worth it. And look, you can
right.
build a great team without spending a lot of money. And like the only way that that works is a team like the Orioles, where a lot of guys are on rookie contracts. It's not because they're not spending money; it's because their young guys are hitting right.
Yeah, and that's impressive from a team building standpoint in terms of the people in the baseball operations signing, scouting the right guys, and I think that's all really like interesting as a fan. That's cool, but when you're rooting for payrolls to stay low, you're just rooting for the owners to keep more money. So that
Right.
is not, it's there's no virtue to not paying the guys who are
Mhm.
actually, the reasons we watch this game. So yeah, I'm rooting for it to stick the way it is right now. I would love to see Texas Philadelphia because it would be nice either way. Otherwise, I'll be obviously the now that the Braves are out, because I think after our
Yeah.
experience with Braves fans online,
Mhm.
I was. We know some very good Braves fans, right? Our friend Max
Yeah.
Fine, comedian,
Mhm.
great Braves fan.
Sarah Tiana, great Braves fan.
Tiana, great. She's cool, very funny lady, and a legit Braves fan. Was sad for them, but oh my God, the people online. I do admit that I ducked into our Twitter, and as soon as they lost, I replied to a couple people. There was this one psychopath who just kept tweeting at us the score of the Cubs games every time the Braves scored a run. So I did log back in. I went back and found his tweets from 2 weeks ago and just replied 3-1 as soon as they lost. I admit it. So
Well,
anyway,
didn't you quote tweet someone who had said, "I hope you enjoy watching us in the playoffs," and you were like, "Yes, we did enjoy it."
yeah, I did. Yes, I dropped in with a little bit of petty there at Away Games Pod on the soon to disappear X, because we ain't paying $1 for that
No,
shit.
no, 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 certainly not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would really, in one way, like if it were Phillies Astros again, it would be a little easier to watch because it would just be so obvious for me to root for the Phillies. But I would
Yeah,
rather that the Astros just not even have a shot to
get him
potentially
out.
pull something off.
Yeah,
Astros Diamondbacks is for sure the thing I would least want to watch. I would like
yeah.
maybe follow it on my phone, but it would be hard for me to sit down and watch one of those games. But Phillies Rangers could be a lot of fun, and I mean both teams seem to have really good fan bases. The crowds have been pretty electric in both places. Do you have any hot takes on the playoff format? There's been so much discussion about this on Twitter recently, and I don't know if there's any discussion amongst real baseball people or if it's just a bunch of fans who are upset that their really good team lost in the first round. But you saw the Orioles, Braves, and Dodgers, all three teams that won 100 plus games. Two of the three were swept. The Braves lost in four. Um, do you think there's any validity to the idea that this new playoff format is making hot teams cold when they have to sit for longer?
Not really. I mean, I guess the last time besides this playoff format, I remember people talking about like when the Rockies had that crazy hot run that got them to the World Series against the Red
Mhm.
Sox. Um, I was that 2013 or no? It was no,
2007.
2007. Yeah, Jesus, that was way before 2007. That was the thing where the Rockies went super hot for a long time
Mhm.
and then had to sit around and got it seemed like they got cold. I don't know. I mean, I do think baseball is a sport that's not, you're not meant to have multiple days off really in that way. But also I just think I think a short series leads to weird sample sizes, So
Right.
I think it's a little bit of whining from those
Mhm.
from the those fan bases, which I understand. Like I get it; it's frustrating for your team to win 100 games and be out that quickly, and that is why I don't like this playoff format because I think it's just too many teams. I
Yeah.
think we play 162. We know who the best teams are. That's why I loved my favorite is the four team to each to each
Mhm.
league playoff where it's division winners and one wild card. If I was booking it, that's how I'm doing it. It's just pair them up. We got the four best teams. We know who they are. Play longer series. So yeah, I don't like I don't
How would
like
you feel about going back? It'll never happen, but hypothetically, how would you feel about either going back to four teams or going back to the one game playoff for the 4 and 5 teams and then changing the DS to best of seven instead of best of five?
I think everything you said is better than what we got.
Yeah.
Like I don't like the way this it's just sloppy. It feels like to me when I'm watching this, I don't know when the real playoffs start. I'm just
Right.
like,
Well, it's like the play-in tournament kind of for
I
the NBA.
I don't like that either. I think if you need more than a sentence to explain how the playoffs work, you fucked up. I think,
Yeah.
like I trying to you because you are on Horse Hoops, you do a basketball podcast.
Hmm.
I mean, and the part of that podcast is you're talking to fans that aren't necessarily super fans. Explaining the play-in tournament is difficult, isn't it?
Right.
Like,
It is because of the fact that they don't actually consider it part of the playoffs. At least in baseball, like all
right,
of it is just under the umbrella of playoffs. But technically speaking, like the Bulls were not a playoff team last year because they won a play-in game and then lost a second play-in game and missed the playoffs.
right.
So that just the wording of it is a little silly. I mean, to be honest, like the play-in tournament in the NBA has been a lot of fun and it's kept more teams in it for longer, which is exactly what MLB was trying to accomplish. And it goes without saying that if the Cubs had snuck into the last playoff spot, we would have been grateful that there was an extra playoff spot for them to sneak into.
Right.
But it is, yeah, it's a little interesting now where even looking forward to next year, which is a year that I think all Cubs fans agree, like winning the division should be the absolute baseline expectation for what this team does. But even if you win the division, the likelihood that you're going to get a bye in the first round when you know that the Dodgers and Braves are probably going to be just as good next year as they were this year,
Hmm.
you're probably still in that best of three series. Maybe you have home field advantage, but like
Hmm.
it's tough.
Best of three should not exist in baseball playoffs. I mean
Yeah.
that it's just that's you shouldn't. I know most rotations are 5-man rotations, but I feel like in a series you should get to four starting spots. I That's the
Yeah.
best of series. When your team is made up throughout the whole year.
Hmm.
Rotation of starting pitchers, in set in one way. I feel like you shouldn't have a partial representation of what your team is in the playoffs. It should
Right.
be more full than that. But also, this is so it's a good question because, as you say, there has been a lot of discussion about it, and there has been a lot of like
Hmm.
complaining because is it a disadvantage for the higher seeded teams? Well, I don't know that's a disadvantage. I think it's less of it doesn't give them a distinct advantage besides
Hmm.
getting to reset their starting rotation, which is an advantage. But it's just like no matter what, it's just never going back to what is a better representation of the sport because capitalism, because it's just
Hmm.
more games equals more money equals what owners in the league will always do
Right.
to the detriment of the game and the sport and whatever.
Yeah, and I feel like I saw you talking on Twitter a little bit about the idea that it's kind of silly that for a sport where there are so many regular season games played,
Hmm.
there's really very little uh there's really very little like importance put on being the best team in either league in the regular season, which feels a little wrong because like that is really impressive. Like the
Yeah.
Orioles, I hope that their fans still remember this as a good season as they should, but like because of the fact that they got swept in the playoffs and didn't even win a playoff game, it kind of just feels like, but was it really that great?
Right.
It should be celebrated. You won 100 games when nobody thought you were going to win 80.
It just feels like they were around for less of the season at this point,
Yeah.
And I think if We know who the best teams are in the league at the end of the year more than any other sport on earth. I don't
Mhm.
believe there's another sport on earth that plays this many games every year, you know?
Yeah.
And for that reason, it does suck to me when the best teams are just not involved at the part of
Mhm.
the season that means the most, you know? Um
Right.
so yeah, it's and I do like that is in those years we had with the Cubs, obviously that run where we had three straight Final Fours, you know, and
Mhm.
winning the division over and over. It is really fun as part of a baseball fan who watches so many hours and follows for so many hours throughout the year to get to really celebrate a division championship. You know, like that's really fun, and I do think that it's you can still celebrate it. And I think the Orioles, I'm sure, went nuts celebrating it because of what an unexpected thing it was. But I do think this playoff format causes those kinds of celebrations to be more muted now, and that is
Right.
too bad.
Yeah. Like that person who reported that the Rangers were having a crazy celebration after
God.
they got into the playoffs. Clearly,
Yeah.
it's affected them negatively.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a Astros reporter, right?
Yeah.
Who posted that and was like, "Oh, yeah, it seems like they should have gotten back to business like the Astros did." And yeah, they popped a couple bottles as they should.
Would you rather be a Dodgers fan or a Giants fan? Let me explain what I mean by that. Would you rather be the fan of a team that always gets in, always wins the division, but ultimately doesn't have that much postseason success, or would you rather be a team that like only gets in sometimes but then wins more championships?
That's a that's a good question, and I think the best way I can make the analogy to it is in sports. The only time I remember making a choice to pick a favorite team was when I got into soccer. And when I got into soccer, one of the guidelines was I didn't want to pick at the time Manchester United because I didn't want to pick a team where winning everything didn't mean as much. So I picked a team called Tottenham Hotspur. Ended up being a team that I went with, which turns out was a little too close to the Cubs. They haven't won anything in a long time, but I like a team that I wanted them to be like pretty good, and if they did
Yeah.
win, it would mean a ton. And so I think like the it's a good question that I think the championship means the most, right?
Right.
And like you want it and I think the Giants, maybe if you're a Giants fan, like the regular season games mean more, you know, because you don't,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't always end the best, right? I
Right.
guess maybe I'd go Giants there. Also, I just, you know,
Yeah.
I think they're a less evil organization overall. But,
Sure.
uh, but yeah, how about you?
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to be a Marlins fan. Like, yes, the Marlins
No.
have won more championships than the Cubs have in the
Oh,
past
right.
30
Yeah,
years, but I wouldn't want to be a fan of that team
that's
based on how they
true.
run their organization.
Yeah. No, I think that sucks too. The Marlins, who have never been the best team in baseball and yet have two championships. They've never been the best team in the
Right.
National League East. They haven't,
And they
and
never
they might
will.
never. No, no.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, you don't want to be that either. But yeah, it's. I do think if you're an Orioles fan, this year was great, but you are just, you know, you're blue balled at the end of it a little bit, you know.
Right.
It's which is too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I lean on the side of I'd rather be a Giants fan and get to like because in that stretch where they won every other year, didn't they miss the playoffs in the years that they didn't win the championship? Like it was a kind of a weird run there.
Oh yeah, and even I mean they you know no shade on those teams that were amazing teams in playoff runs, but it was a little Cardinalsy because they really
Sure.
they were not like you know not every one of those championships, but
Yeah.
like in a couple of in at least one it was like this team's not even that good
Well,
really.
they rode Madison Bumgarner the way a hockey team rides like a hot goalie.
100 yeah absolutely yeah
So,
yeah.
but yeah, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, that's it. That's it. Watching these playoffs, rooting for those Phillies and Rangers, and you know we're getting ever closer to the season the Cubs get to actually participate in again.
That's
Theoretically,
true.
the off season is
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we'll probably do a couple more regular episodes as we talk about the playoffs as the season winds down, and then I would think we can talk about this later. Maybe like a kind of larger Cubs, like how did they do? What are we looking for in the offseason? And then probably we're gonna take a break.
Yeah, we'll do a big, Cubs season review episode too,
Yeah.
once the rest of the baseball season's over. So we'll have some stuff for you. At Away Games Pod on all the things, and yeah, and thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you soon.